Good. Welcome, everyone. I can see the numbers ticking up. People are prompt, which is always good. We'll be starting in a minute or so. So, still time to maybe grab a quick coffee. We've got about an hour today for this discussion on National Mentoring Month, mentoring, and all things mentoring. So I've got a few slides. We've got some fabulous panelists joining us who are on screen now. We're going to have a discussion around kind of going for great, the power of mentoring, the impact it's had on people, communities, organizations, etc., etc. I've got a short slide deck. I was saying to my fellow panelists, it's not, those who are familiar with LGBT Great's work, sometimes we like a good old, 30 slide deck for these presentations, but it's short and sweet today because, the meat of the sandwich or the falafel of the wrap is the conversation with, because I said the meat of the sandwich once and someone was like, oh, it's not very vegan inclusive. The two vegans on my team who are probably dialing in now, cool. But so I'm Alex, director here at LGBT Great. I head up our advisory business line where I oversee our data research and training initiatives. Um, should we do introductions for the panel now? I think, you're going to be here. There's no point waiting to the end, but I think we could probably just do introductions now, and then I'll do my blurb about Mentoring Month, and then we can get into the discussion if that's okay with everyone. So I don't know, Claire, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi all, Claire Johnson. I work for Columbia Threadneedle Investments in the client management, heading up our EMEA pooled client management function for our corporate clients, and have been joined and affiliated with LGBT Great through both work and through personally wanting to be an ally, and have also been really enjoying taking part in the mentoring scheme. So yeah, really pleased to be here and talking to everyone.
Good stuff. Jen, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I work at Fidelity International. I've been there for 16 years. I relocated to the UK through my job last August, and it's been a great move. And I'm in the sustainability team.
Fabulous. Thanks, Jen. And last but not least, Emma.
Thank you. I've never been called a falafel before, Alex, so thank you.
Or you could suggest an alternative as well if you prefer. I don't know, what, a coronation chicken sandwich? What's the favorite?
Falafel's good.
Falafel's good.
So Emma Palethorpe, I work for St James's Place. We're a founder member of LGBT Grey, which we're very proud of. I work with our Asia business, heading up our change function there. And I also chair the LGBTQ+ network at SJP, as well as being a serial mentor with a number of organisations as well. So really pleased to be.
A serial mentor. No, I really want to get into what serial we'd all be as instead, but yeah, thank you. Great to be, with you today, and then, a huge firstly and foremostly, thank you for all of your work and engagement on the programs that we run. I know that, this does sit side of desk, and the mentoring program is something that's near and dear to our hearts, and I know is near and dear to yours. So, from us to you, thank you for all of your continued support and engagement. Thanks also to everyone joining today. I can see some names I recognize, some names I don't. So for those that are new to LGBT Great, welcome. For those that are familiar, welcome back. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat function here or in the Q&A box. We'll try and cover them as we go today, rather than we will have some time at the end for dedicated questions. But if there's something that you want to share, thoughts, reflections, or questions, just pop them in as we go, and we'll try and get to those as we progress through today's conversation. Okay, so mentoring is the topic of conversation today. And for those that are not aware, it's National Mentoring Month, which is in January every year. So last year we did a big in-person event talking about mentoring, and we had Shrey, who's an analyst on my team, and their mentor, as some of the panelists. So we had a really good conversation last year around the impact of mentoring on, people who are junior in their career, who are senior, who are serial mentors, as you said. And this year we kind of wanted to reignite that conversation for those for whom mentoring may be a new experience, maybe something you're considering, or it might be old hat to you and you just want to have your say and share your thoughts. National Mentoring Month is a celebration and explores the broad-ranging impacts And there's a reason that mentoring is continually a topic of conversation. It's the multiple programs, Emma, that you're on are working is because people understand, certainly once they've experienced a mentoring relationship, just how valuable it can be. This 2016 study found 97% of mentees considered the relationship to be valuable. And then in 2022, we ran some data capture here, and we found that 90% of LGBTQ plus talent would like to be involved in a mentoring program. So at its broadest level, communities understand and people understand the power and potential power of mentoring. But the LGBTQ plus community also, stands to benefit from the unique lived experiences of mentors who might also be part of the community. And so it's with great pride that we run a mentoring program spearheaded by Lauren, who has decided to not be on camera, but is with us today and will be on the chat function. Lauren, one day I'll get you up here. There you are. Hello. But yeah, Lauren heads up our mentoring program and has been a kind of very much central to the visibility and engagement initiatives that we have. It's a cross country, cross organization mentoring program. We've had 350 people across, I think the latest that's 12 countries, 25 organizations over the past few years. So it's been a truly global initiative, which we're really excited to be continuing this year. I'll tell you a bit more about the specifics of our program in a minute. But LGBTQ plus people, we know experience disproportionate levels of discrimination in many instances, and in many countries it's illegal to be out and proud. There are still multiple countries that criminalize same-sex sexual interaction, gender identity that doesn't match your gender assigned at birth. So for the community, it's still there is still a need for support mechanisms to support individuals and to support communities, and mentoring is one of the pathways through which this support can be found. In a corporate context, we like to think that the four walls of the offices that we're in are safe. But in many countries around the world where, despite the best efforts of the companies who may be present there, that's not always the case for employees on the ground. So mentoring programs in a corporate context can provide that formal channel to get pastoral support, skill development, and a range of other benefits, which we'll kind of talk about later with the panel and what they've experienced and what their mentees have got from the relationship, but also what they as mentors have gotten from the relationship. But the LGBTQ plus community, we can, it's about to be LGBT History Month, do need additional mechanisms, a concerted effort to create opportunity for additional support where historically and currently that's not always present. So mentoring matters, full stop. LGBTQ plus mentoring programs matter too, and we run one of those. I think is kind of the high level. Lauren, do jump in if there's anything you want to add. But our mentoring program, as I said, is now live. Hooray, fanfare. It's a global program, so you are welcome to participate wherever you're dialing in from today, either virtually or in person if your mentor and the mentee, you're both in the same place. It's a program where you don't have to be LGBTQ plus to join. You can be an ally. We actively encourage allies. Indeed, if one of the pushes this year for us is to get more people generally as mentors, and especially if you've ever felt that you haven't been represented in an organization or in the industry, if you don't see someone that looks like you, that has the same background as you or the lived experience as you, then, and there's no mentor for you, maybe you could be the mentor for someone else. So I think that's kind of the push this year, is to try to broaden out who is a mentor on our program. You don't have to be senior. You can be. I'm joined with some folks today who have a range of experiences and who hold senior leadership positions in your organizations with big teams and stuff. Probably Emma, probably not as big as you'd like, given how much work you do. But we're not just looking for senior people. Junior people are welcome to apply, indeed encouraged. So I would say this is a kind of open call for mentors and mentees as well. The program is a rolling program. So, at any point in the year, you can get involved. A new feature this year is that your mentees will be able to select and request a specific mentor. So if anyone on the call, I don't know if you've got capacity for another mentee, but if you like what they say, if you feel that a connection, you would like to explore, you will be able to request, I think, to be matched with that specific mentor. LGBT Great will step in to oversee the matching process. So we are heavily involved in that. So there's two ways you can get involved. You can either request a specific mentor, or you can join generally into the mentoring pool, and then we will match for you. So essentially, there's two ways, and then we will be running a cohort, which Lauren, I'm not sure when the final dates are for the launch of that program, but we will be running that soon. But later in the year, you'll be able to request a mentor as well. Question: do you have to identify as LGBTQ plus to mentor, or can you be a champion ally of the community? No, you do not have to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. We'd love to have you if you're an ally, actively, or you're looking to be more authentic in your allyship. You don't have to be LGBTQ plus to be a mentee either. This is a program to protect explicitly and to provide opportunities for the LGBTQ plus community and allies. Full stop. So yeah, you're very much welcome. I think that's probably the high level. Lauren, anything else? Sorry, thank you. Correction. It'll be rolling throughout the year. There'll be no dedicated cohort. So get involved whenever, I think is the call to action. Sorry, Lauren. Oh, bad, Alex. Got the information wrong. But no, I think that's it really. So get involved. It's an important program. It's one that's dear to our hearts, and I think continues to have a real impact on the people that are involved in it. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from them themselves. So delighted to be joined today by a great host of people who have been involved directly in the mentoring program that we have run. And I suppose, maybe just go back to basics. I mean, Claire, could we start with you, really? To your mind, what does it mean to be an impactful mentor on this program, and maybe more broadly, how did you get involved in the LGBT Great Mentoring Program? Kind of paint us a bit of a picture of your experience, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, being an impactful mentor, I guess the sort of proof is almost in the pudding. So what is, really great to hear is feedback from your mentees, so you can, help and enjoy and celebrate their successes, but also help regroup, redirect where things perhaps haven't gone to plan. So I think that feedback is really important. But from my side, to be an impactful mentor, I think having benefited from mentors during my career as well as mentoring others, creating an environment, as you said, Alex, where your mentee feels, that there's an open, safe, confidential space, so that they can share ideas that perhaps you wouldn't share with a manager or a colleague. Really challenging, encouraging, and hopefully inspiring your mentee to be their best and grow through sharing your sort of perhaps past experiences and knowledge to help them achieve those sort of aims that you're jointly working towards. I think being really genuine, being engaged, trying to put yourself in the mentee's shoes can also really help. And then in terms of how I got involved with the program that you guys are running, I've been involved with you guys through work and outside for a long time as an ally. And I think for me, what I've really benefited from in this is, I have been paired, so thank you, Lauren, with a really great mentee that we've been working with. And I think you build up such a great relationship. It's really interesting to listen and talk to people about their careers, their hopes, their aims, and also for me as an ally to understand perhaps a bit more about some of the challenges that people face. That helps me, as a manager, as a colleague, and as a friend of people in the community, being much better equipped to understand some of those challenges and to help. And in fact, in one instance where I was on a panel through work, my mentee was able to give me some really great tips of things that they found really helpful that I then used in this panel. So yeah, it's been a really brilliant experience, and I'd recommend to people, if you've not tried it, happy to have a conversation, but would think it's something that everyone can really offer, and you benefit equally, in my view, as a mentor and as a mentee.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? Sometimes you think, oh, it has to be one-sided. It's just the mentee taking. But actually, if they're mutually reinforcing reciprocal relationships from the beginning, if that's the mindset, then I suppose that impact is increased. Emma, any thoughts from you on what it means to be an impactful mentor?
I think I was just reflecting on Claire did a fantastic job answering that question, but just reflecting there's a whole 360-degree thing here, isn't there? It's very hard to separate out with the mentee just one thing you might be working on. It's kind of being there at almost every aspect of their life. I know with my mentees, we've talked about absolutely everything under the sun, not just about work. So I think having that impactful relationship is for me is about there's almost kind of the psychological safety to be talk about absolutely everything.
Yeah, moving beyond work, I think is also kind of fundamental. We were talking in the kind of pre-brief that we had around like meeting in the pub with your mentee, which I think is great, right? If you're in the same place, that's how you break down those those barriers of kind of fear around, oh God, this is someone else on a different firm. What am I going to say? But if you can create a space where people feel safe psychologically, whether that's the pub or whether that's through how you ground the session in kind of principles of openness, confidentiality, and things. Personally, I think the pub is just as an effective social lubricant as it is I don't know, mentoring lubricant. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know what I mean. Jen, any thoughts from your side on that, this idea of impactful mentoring?
Yeah, look, I don't think I've got a lot to add from what Claire and Emma have already said. I think to me, I think it's been really terrific to have this opportunity to both give back. I remember when I was at an earlier stage of my career and I, wanted a more senior reference point. And I'm sort of particularly conscious that can be more needed in more underrepresented communities. And I think this program targets that more specifically. So I think there's a sort of an additional layer of benefit from that.
I think that's a really important point, right? And I suppose the question is, in what way is it different? In what way is it more impactful for underrepresented communities? I know there's some immediate thoughts I have, but Jen, would you be able to just expand on that for the folks and kind of how you see it relative to, all mentoring programs are mentoring programs, but not all LGBTQ plus mentoring programs are the same as kind of general quote unquote mentoring programs. What is the impact that you think it has?
Well, I'm super interested in your perspective on that, Alex. For me, I guess there's three angles. I think the first is kind of implicit in the statement. The lack of relative representation, particularly at senior levels, means I think there is a greater need. You can't just implicitly look at someone who looks like you or thinks like you or has your attributes and draw comfort from that from a distance. So I think there's a little bit more of a need to lean in here. And that's true not just of LGBT, but of lots of other forms of underrepresentation as well. I think the second is around using it as a lever to drive inclusion in the workplace, which I think, as many people have said, is a necessary precondition of making diversity work. And I think that's a point that's been well noted. And I think to the extent that these programs exist across the industry and across individual firms, I think they can promote that sense of workplace inclusion. I think the third is to recognize that there are both systemic and idiosyncratic challenges when it comes to membership of underrepresented communities. And I think it's important not to kind of draw a big brush and say, well, everyone must have the same set of experiences, because your cultural upbringing, your specific family values, all of these things will contribute to that. But I think but it's also, I think right to recognize that there might be unique or different aspects of that experience, and that can then be reflected through in the mentoring as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely, completely agree. I really like that phrase, drawing comfort. I think that's really an interesting phrase for me in terms of like, where do you seek comfort in the workplace? Mentoring, pastoral care, etc. Particularly for as you mentioned, the systemic and the idiosyncratic elements. If there's structural inequality in the financial services industry, which we see, whether that's about financial well-being of the communities we serve or the kind of underrepresentation at senior leadership levels of people like, in the community, then you have to break that down at some point, and it's not a one approach. It's a multi-pronged approach to overcoming that, and mentoring is one aspect of that, where you draw comfort and then you build up emotional battery to kind of tackle that. Claire, Emma, any of your thoughts on the kind of that centering underrepresented communities, etc.?
I was going to say, just sort of focusing on your two-pronged piece there, I think it's absolutely right that, as a mentor, part of our job as well is to then, particularly if it's for something within your own firm or even just, within the wider financial community, that you can then just really make sure that people's challenges are better understood. You can make sure that they're getting a space at the table, perhaps in some of the more sort of senior meetings, and that people are aware of some of the challenges that they may have been blissfully unaware of before. So I think it's our job just to have that sort of really active voice, and also then to try and help and offer support and ideas where we can.
Emma, anything you want to add to that?
I just have a little bit of simple maths. Minority groups are underrepresented at senior levels of organizations. Mentoring is proven to help people with their careers, so you just put the two together, right?
Yeah, no, interesting. A bit of simple algebra. Let's try and find the Venn. I think a couple of points that resonated with me: the drawing comfort and then the practical application. That both of those are very fundamental aspects of mentoring, right? As in being an effective and active listener, and letting your mentee, whether they needed agony, aunt or uncle, or non-binary parent, I suppose, or whether they want like very specific technical support, or whether they want, political, how do I navigate the politics of my organization? All of those are very legitimate starting points for mentoring. Each one of those can be a very nicely self-contained deliverable, put it in like project terms of the mentoring relationship, is successfully navigating that or building mechanisms to infiltrate the senior leadership team as an underrepresented person. All of those kinds of things I've seen stated in the survey that we run with our mentees. That that was what I wanted to do, was to build my profile in my organization, but then also to seek comfort because I don't feel that my voice is heard, or I don't hear voices like mine. And I think those are mutually reinforcing aspects of the mentoring relationship. Emma, you and I were talking about kind of the LGBTQ plus element of the mentoring program, and it's particularly powerful, I think, when mentors and mentees are both part of the community, and actually we just say, right, this is something that is for the LGBTQ plus community, first and foremost in a way, and that can represent a really unique experience and opportunity to build that relationship with someone with shared lived experiences, etc. But I suppose, what are your thoughts on how do you build that common ground around lived experience and build rapport in those relationships?
Yeah, I've got a really good example there, Alex. I've got a trans history myself. I transitioned in the workplace a good few years back now. And I've recently mentored someone through the LGBT Great program who'd reached a point in their life where they felt they needed to do the same, wasn't aware of anyone in their organization that had done it, but was supported by the organization. And I had great support from SJP as well. It's fantastic, but there wasn't someone who'd done it. I was cutting a path. Everything we did was a first. And although I say the people around me that were supporting me were fantastic, they could hear what it was like to be trans, but they couldn't feel what it was like to be trans. So it was kind of strength, but it was a different kind of strength. Having what I can do what I did do for my mentee was help them navigate some of the unknowns only kind of the trans person might think about or would know about because they've been there. So I think it was about the understanding, the trust, no need to explain things. There's a whole kind of imposter syndrome thing going off as well, and feeling isolated because you're the one going through it on your own in your organization. And you can joke about the same things. You can be inappropriate about the same things. Shared language, cultural references. Yeah. It all kind of led to a really, really deep connection. And I'm really, really pleased to say that it sounds negative. That relationship ended. It ended well. it ended because we'd achieved the goal for that person, and they transitioned in the workplace, had come out the other side, and was kind of living their best life, and they were just so happy that they got there. And you know, I'm kind of really grateful to have been on that journey with them, and quite proud of yeah, what they achieved. But having said that, I do want to recognise that even though within the community there's going to be diversity of experience identity, so you can't always assume that two experiences are going to be the same. So whilst having that shared experience is a good foundation, it's also, you know, important not to make assumptions about the other person's experience as well.
Oh, I mean, that's just great. I mean, that's just fabulous success story, really. And it's fabulous to hear that when you say the relationship ended, that's
Yeah.
like the absolute best thing to hear from a mentoring relationship, that it did what it was intended to do. We had you defined specific goals, and you know, together made that a reality, you know, and you were part of that process. So I think that's a really encouraging story for anyone on the call here. You know, if you have a specific goal in mind, a mentoring relationship is precisely one way that you can force yourself, help yourself, you know, to make that a reality. I suppose, you know, you mentioned the aspect of, obviously, you know, you had that shared history, that shared experience, that shared trans identity, which is wonderful. From an allyship perspective as well, I suppose if you didn't have that shared trans experience, then, you know, you might say, oh, well, actually, that's not very appropriate mentoring because you know, partnership, because you didn't have that experience. But I actually think if your mentee had, you know, Claire or Jen as a mentor, for example, then they would have had a different experience, but it would have been just as valuable, right? So I wondered, you know, Claire, Jen, your thoughts on kind of now the opposite question: how does being a mentor help you become a more effective LGBTQ plus kind of ally, really? Jen, I don't know if you want to kick us off there.
I don't consciously think about the specific identity of the mentees. I just kind of, they're open sessions for mentees to bring whatever the sort of problem of the day is. And you know, as both Emma and Clara said, that they can be either broader structural ones, or they can be, you know, today I had a tough conversation and I didn't really like how I was spoken to, and how should I respond? And I think you know, the way I think about it is how do you solution through the problem statement of the day. So I think there have been some common themes. I think a focus on building confidence in the workplace, a focus on public speaking. I think it's um, a focus on being able to get the right level of attention from their own senior management. I think one of the unique things about this program, and actually one of the reasons it's really effective, is that it's cross-firm. To me, there's quite an important distinction between mentorship and sponsorship. And sponsorship is, without question, more powerful for your career advancement. If you can catch the attention of someone senior in your own organization and benefit from that direct level of sponsorship, that ability to be in the right meetings, to be, you know, I always think career advancement is about what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so to have a sponsor in the room is incredibly powerful. Mentorship can sometimes get blended with those two things, and it's not actually that. And this is actually, I think, a purer form of that, because it's the distance of the organizations means that there's no professional working relationship. It really is an advisory one, where you can think about a problem dispassionately, and you can say, well, look, this is, you know, understanding your organizational dynamics. This is how I think this has arisen within my organization. This is how we would have treated it. And so you can bring, I think, a slightly different perspective to the problem. So yeah, I mean, does it make me, to answer your question more directly, how does that make me a better LGBT ally? I don't know the answer to that. I can actually see one of I think I saw the name of one of my mentees on the list. So I think maybe
there you go. Submit an anonymous question, mentee, and give us the real scoop.
It's probably better for other people to comment on that.
I think it's interesting, and I think it's also a really valid response, I think, to that question, to say, I'm not I'm not really sure directly how this impacts, right? I think when we talk about authentic allyship, sometimes people get hung up on, well, what am I being seen to be doing? I have to do something so visibly. I have to be so conscious in this allyship. But like being a mentor on an LGBTQ plus led program is in and of itself an expression of allyship, right? Whether or not it becomes something that's hyper conscious for those involved is kind of a secondary element. But I do think it's a really interesting point around how conscious does allyship have to be for it to be effective? And my view would probably be as long as you're doing something, if it gets ingrained into your subconscious actions, then that's the purest form of allyship. I think is when you don't think about it. So getting involved in programs like this, and as you say, creating that space that's safe for a young non-binary person, for example, to talk to you about, well, someone kept getting my pronouns wrong, or XYZ happened to me at work, and you can go dispassionately, okay, cool, well, let's talk that through. That voice of support, the active listening, is in and of itself an expressed form of allyship. So I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about it in that way, of like the way you created the space, the difference between mentoring and sponsorship, and the dispassionate, in a good way, element that you bring of like the neutral, safe, open space for someone to fill. One of the fundamental aspects of allyship is like yielding the floor, right? So as in, like, instead of me speaking, I let you speak, or I create a space for you to speak. And like mentoring is a platform creator. You give someone the microphone and say, off you go then. What's going on? Tell me about it. And that in and of itself is a great form of allyship. So for a mentee to create that space effectively, naturally, or even, artificially, is in my view one of the ways that allyship is then expressed through mentoring. That's just my read, I think. But Emma, I don't know if, or Claire, I don't know if you have thoughts on that topic.
In terms of how sort of someone can be a good, or sort of get the most out of perhaps being a mentee. I suppose from my experience, where I found it works best is where the person has got some real clear sort of aims or goals they want to focus on, and that can be sort of personal, it can be work, it can be as specific as getting promoted, it can be just increasing their presence, being more visible, being more confident, as Jen said. And I think when you've got those aims, it really helps you be able to prepare as the mentor, and then you can sort of really cast your mind back sometime in some cases to maybe a similar situation that you've had, or an experience and learning that you can share, but also then it gives you that platform to work together. And then often what happens is you're sort of working on this piece, but you might find out that actually you need to look at something slightly to one side or the other to help function and get that covered off. So that for me, I think has been the most successful mentoring relationships that I've sort of taken part in.
As in a kind of follow-up random question, did you feel like you as a mentor had to do lots of prep to be a good mentor, or did you approach it as well, I just, I'll bring my experience, my lived experience, my professional experience, and just see what happens? Like, talk me through your thinking process.
Yeah, I suppose sometimes it's down to it. So I think, as I said earlier, that Lauren, I think the matching process that you guys have is really great. And I think that's really important because obviously, if someone wants to exceed in finance, I'm probably not your person. But if you need to know about, I don't know, relationship building or networking or managing a team, those sorts of things, and I've had lots of experience that I can share. So I think that is really important. But also then I think the sort of prep that perhaps I have done is, talking to friends who are in the community who can perhaps help me understand. And actually what has been really interesting was some conversations I've had with sort of long-standing friends that have really sort of helped further open my eyes to how, as an ally, we can make things slightly easier for people wherever we can, and step up and challenge things that we're seeing that maybe we wouldn't have noticed that could be having an impact. So I think probably not necessarily preparation as such, but just
was like a mindset type.
Better in yourself and learning from it as well.
No, I like that as a takeaway. Emma, anything you want to add on the allyship sort of comment? I know it's something that we talk about a lot in the DEI space, and any thoughts from your perspective?
Sorry, Alex. Which bit of the question?
Sorry,
Okay.
rambling. Yeah, so just any thoughts from your side on how mentoring can help you to be a better and more authentic ally?
Oh wow, we're going all the way back up to there.
No, just as any general points before we move on. Any reflections?
I'm happy. I think it's
Okay.
been covered.
Okay, great. I suppose that, we mentioned it a couple of times around like seniority and, stage in your career and that, in the early stages, Jen, you mentioned at the top of the call around, early stage sponsorship and then more detail around sponsorship is really impactful for, particularly for young people. I think, mentoring is impactful irrespective of the stage you're at in your career, or your seniority, but an impactful mentoring relationship can help, springboard junior talent into a new industry role, organization, or position, etc. I suppose I'd like to just focus in on that junior talent. Someone we had a message through. Someone said, as an LGBT great mentor, I find the more organic the relationship discussion, the more reciprocal the mentoring is. I've certainly led so much more from the Gen Z lens in being a mentor. So someone's talked about, learning from your junior person. But I suppose Emma, maybe from your perspective, how can it impact the junior talent coming into the workforce?
I've, Alex, I did confess earlier to being a serial mentor. So
Yeah.
I'll talk about another relationship. I also mentor through the Alito Foundation, which some of the people on the call might know of. It helps young people from underrepresented groups into the corporate ladder. And I've been mentoring a young black woman from East London who was a professional athlete, but has had to leave that career and wants to enter corporate world. So exact opposite of the relationship I had with LGBT great. There's things there that I've got no or very little experience of, being young, being black and being athletic. It's not me. But what I do have is years and years of experience of the corporate world that it's just ingrained in me. It's finding an in, of persevering when times get tough, of staying motivated when you're not back, and things like introspection, understanding values and motivators and skills and things like that. So this young woman I've been mentoring, she'd enlisted for a coding course because she thought programming was where she was at, what she wanted to do. Wasn't sure where to go next, so we spent loads of time working with her on what values are, what's important to her, what skills she could take from what she was doing in the athletics world into the corporate ladder. And she asked so many questions about so many topics because if you've never worked in an office, how do projects work? How does testing work? How do corporates work? What's culture? How does culture, how do I form relationships? How do I get on in the office? Things that, I've been doing this for 39 years, so I take it for granted, but to an outsider, it's pretty damn scary. So look, end of the story is I'm really, really pleased for her. Last week, had a call with her and she told me she's been offered a programming role with a bank in London.
Oh, amazing.
I am so delighted about. She's delighted about. Half of us delighted. The other half is scared. Our relationship doesn't end here. We're going to stay close and keep talking and help her kind of. She'll be coming to me probably almost weekly with, how does this work? How does that, how do offices work?
That's cool.
Really exciting. So completely different to the previous example. Someone who I thought, at face value, very, very different to myself, but there's something I could offer.
Oh, that's really cool. That's such a cool case study as well. It's interesting to hear you talk about the phase of the relationship as well. It's like, she's in now, and now the mentoring, focus shifts. I think, it's interesting to hear that like the goals of the mentoring relationship can change and mature and evolve over time, and that participating in a mentoring relationship is not just about doing one thing. It's about an ongoing relationship which changes and evolves over time. Oh, that's so cool. I send our congratulations to her. That's really exciting. Okay. I mean, Jen, Claire, any thoughts from your side on kind of, the impact that mentoring has on junior talent, or the experience maybe you had as a junior person in involved in a mentoring program? I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add there.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that sentiment around, the the best relationships being an organic one, or I would think of it as being an authentic one.
Mm.
And I think the way you build authenticity is through having trust between the mentor and the mentee, and the way you build trust, I think, is through vulnerability. Both sides can reveal a little bit about themselves and where they come from and the challenges they had. I think that builds that common shared understanding, even if you're coming at a problem statement from a completely opposite end. If you create that level of vulnerability, that creates that level of trust. I think that's a wonderful basis on which to start a mentoring relationship. For me personally, I think the other thing that has been a focus of the discussions that I've had is around the part of finance that I work in, which used to be niche, but I guess has become a little bit more visible in the last few years. And I think that intersection of sustainability, these broader societal issues, and finance and what finance can do, I think that's generally a topic of kind of significant interest to I would say to all generations, but particularly I think to the younger generation. And they look for that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning in the jobs that they have. And I think it's a great jumping off point to start by talking about that, because it lends itself so easily to other side discussions that can come from that shared desire to have purpose.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I think with the Gen Z, the most values-driven generation ever, or something. I saw a stat, and the most invested in investing sustainably ever, which is interesting. Even at the cost, the hit of margin, which is very interesting. That was what I read. Something was like, oh yeah, Gen Z don't care about margins. They're going to care about where that money's going. And I was like, I think there's a nuance there, but I do think there's sustainable investing as an approach is something that we get a lot of questions about, in terms of how do you invest with a more LGBTQ plus inflected approach, or with it socially sustainable first, without losing sight of what the point of investment management is at its core. And I think that's a very complex discussion, but it sounds like Jen is a person to go to for that. But it's something that we get asked about from the mentees that we work with as well, is like, how can I take what I learn in the mentoring program around DE&I or LGBTQ plus elements, et cetera, and translate those into my day job. Like, how do I take that learning and then make a difference? Where does it, obviously identity support, pastoral care, jumping off points for, feeling more confident in yourself or confident in your identity at work is one thing. But I suppose the last question, maybe before we open out to the floor, is kind of how do you effectively take the learnings from, your discussions in your mentoring relationships and then apply those to your work? Is there anything you've learned or seen that helps with that? Is it mindset? Is it just consistency? Does that kind of make sense as a question? I didn't really necessarily write that down in advance. Maybe I should have done. Jen, I don't know if you want to come back on any of what I've just said at all, or.
So you mean in terms of how I've applied my experiences to the mentoring program into my daily work?
I suppose that's a more succinct way of phrasing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't know if it's which is chicken, which is egg, right? Like I think within the work that the way that I try and run teams, or the way I try and interact with colleagues, I think you want to bring that authentic self, you want to bring that inclusive approach, you want to bring that focus on the value of diversity, I think into all aspects of that work. And I think it was kind of that desire and that kind of led me to the mentoring program and wanting to participate in it and feeling that was giving me a lot of benefit from it. And so I guess to a certain extent that becomes then a self-reinforcing loop. And the more value you derive from the two respective things, the more they kind of end up feeding each other. So, which comes from what, I don't know. I don't know if it's useful to necessarily examine. I think I think the whole thing should help an individual, whether you're at a more senior or junior level. The entire experience, I think, is intended to help us be more empathetic, to focus on the things that are often overlooked in a kind of a more let's say cutthroat corporate environment. I think that's I guess that for me is the value of that, as an individual and as a working professional.
Great, thank you. Claire, any thoughts from you on translating that into your daily work?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would sort of perhaps answer from a slightly different perspective as well, because although I'm a mentor through this program and some other programs, I'm also a mentee through our work, which I really enjoy and have been, for a number of years. And I think from that, when I'm working with my mentor, I, really see her as a safe space for me to see and try and navigate some of those challenges of trying to increase your career, things like being the only woman in the room sometimes, all those sorts of pieces that are, challenges faced by lots of people. And also, yes, I suppose using her knowledge, the experiences that she's already, gone through, or, if it's a deck that I'm working on for work, perhaps sharing that with her to get her instant feedback and her perspective from that more senior level to help me better prepare, so that when I then go into a meeting where I'm going to deliver that to someone that I don't perhaps have that safe space with, where I'm asking for something they might not want to, deliver, and I need to be really persuasive. I think that's a really great way that you can use the sort of mentor and mentee relationship.
Yeah, that's really interesting, being a mentor or mentee kind of at the same time, or translating those different experiences into kind of a consistent approach. Very interesting. Emma, any other thoughts from your side on translating that into the day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of a brief reflection. I think Jen and Claire give us some fantastic answers there. I was just pondering on the relationships I've currently got with mentees. One is at the very, very start of their career, just moving into the corporate world. One is on their kind of third job, so they're kind of, at a different stage. And then the other is someone who's kind of very well established in the career, but was undergoing change in their personal life. So, mentoring, I don't think it applies to one particular stage of your career. It can be of value throughout that journey, and it depends on what it is you want to focus on. But I think we touched on it earlier, and I think Claire kind of said it really well, that I've got a project background, I deliver change, so having that thing that you want to focus on, and knowing that thing won't happen just by crossing your fingers and wishing really hard. You've got to undertake activity to get that thing, and that's where the mentoring relationship can help make that happen.
I love that, like an application of like project mindset to mentoring. I think is really good, and probably actually quite natural for many people who have a very strong project background. I do think applying your natural day-to-day work mindset to mentoring as a project is maybe one of the unwritten rules of mentoring, is like treat it like a project and then you'll get the most out of it. If you're just going there for a jolly, even if it's at the pub, having a kind of fixed set of goals, or a changing goal, or at least a foundation to start from, is kind of when people get the most out of these programs. Right, we've got 12 minutes left. We might not need all that time, but I'm opening to the floor. If there are any questions, please, for any of the panelists, please feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A while people are typing. Maybe just, does anyone have any kind of other reflections that we didn't get time to talk about that they would like to share with the group, really, around examples from that you think are particularly relevant, that you would like to share?
I guess maybe my thought would be as well that you may be being a mentor for someone without even realizing it. Although this is a formal program we're talking about, there could be family, friends, colleagues. So yeah, I think it's sort of almost worth being aware of. And I've had lots of mentors, both formally, but also that are, perhaps didn't even realize at the time, but now years later, I can see the massive difference that they had on my personal life, my career, etc.
That's good, and the way it kind of bleeds out into kind of the broader life that we lead.
I've had I've been fortunate enough at different times in my career to have a coach, professional coach, and there are some similarities and some differences. from the experience that we're currently discussing. That there's an element of that kind of almost professional therapy. How do you, you just want to be able to get a problem off your chest. But I think also there's the thing that I think coaching can bring to mentoring is that kind of more structured approach. There is a way of approaching that different coaches, depending on their backgrounds, will teach. And bringing that a little bit of that structure and that knowledge into a mentoring program, I think, can also be quite helpful. Simply because coaching isn't, or at least not one-to-one coaching is generally not available at more junior levels in most corporate organizations, although arguably they should be, because they're really in my mind cost-effective programs with the productivity gains that you ultimately get.
It's interesting. I suppose, yeah. Do you find yourself consciously or unconsciously trying to sort of use some of those techniques with your own mentees? Not obviously saying that you want to become a coach to them, because obviously the relationship is slightly different, but do you find that there are some principles or approaches that do translate nicely as a mentor if you've had that experience?
There are actually. There's a way you ask questions, for example. There's a style of extracting information that can put people either more uncomfortable or more at ease, depending on the elements you choose to style up. There's the long-term focus. A lot of the relationships actually come back down to quite a simple question, which is, what do you want from your career? Like what actually is the thing that will make you happy? Where are you going to find an alignment of your professional interests together with your sort of personal goals? Finding that intersection point is generally a good place to zero your career in on. And so I think there are ways in which you can kind of looking at both angles. What's your skill set? What are you interested in? What are the options that give you career optionality? I think that there's sort of elements that you can bring in. As I say, I think those types of approaches are more to do with coaching than they are to do with mentoring. But I think depending on what the safe space you create with your mentee is, that may or may not be what a mentees want. And actually, the experience I've had with mentees through this program has been focused more on the professional development part of things, how to get to the next level of your career, navigating the corporate ladder, and so on and so forth.
Really interesting. I think that as a focus is fascinating. Extracting information is one of the key skills I think that you need as a mentor. I completely agree with you there. You need to kind of get the mentee talking, because it's only as much as, where it's mentor, the space is created by the mentor, but it's filled by the mentee in a way. Emma, Claire, we've got kind of a few minutes left. Any reflections from you, like last thoughts that you would like to share with people, maybe considering the mentoring program, maybe not, maybe here for the first time, maybe really experienced? Like, what would you like their lasting thoughts to be from your perspective?
Give it a go. What have you got to lose? You'll find something. I think that initial conversation, if you're a mentee thinking of going forward, and find a mentor, find someone who you think you might be able to help you, have a chat with them. They might work out. If not, it's okay to end it if they're not the right person for you, and another.
Okay, so Claire.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I just say I found it so rewarding, whether you're a mentee or a mentor. So I think, if you can set aside some time, and it doesn't even have to be lots of time, it can make such a difference to both sort of parties involved. So I would recommend.
Great stuff. Well, thank you, everyone. I see we've got one final question that's come through. Two questions. Have US and non-UK based persons participated in the past? Yes, it's been a global program. Thanks for that question, Diana. And the matching program is also set up like this. We try and match. I think, Lauren, we try and match based on location is one of the considerations, but not the only consideration. We've had a number of very successful virtual partnerships across countries, London and APAC. We've had some great mentoring relationships there. Particularly, I think that we've had a few trans mentees based in the Asia Pacific region who have, felt that they haven't had that access, either because of the maturity of the Pride network in their organizations or because of the kind of, cultural response to trans identities in some countries. So we've kind of found that that's been quite effective, but that's one strand of many. The question I do want to touch on very quickly was, with cross-company mentoring, what steps can be taken to ensure proprietary or sensitive information is not shared? From our side, I think just first and foremost, it should be considered a confidential conversation. So, don't share sort of more broadly, as a kind of fundamental. But to the panelists, what are in your experiences, how have you kind of navigated that, maybe tension between oversharing or sharing sensitive information, and kind of how to tackle that? Any thoughts? Jen? Yeah. John.
I personally, I love the legal and compliance spin on the flavor of that question, by the way. I personally never encountered it as an issue before. I think there is most of the problems you discuss don't require, like, you don't need details of the problems. You don't need what you need to understand is what the participants are and how they interact with each other. The actual problem they are solving, whether it's it's almost not it's not super relevant to the discussion that I found that it's necessary to have. So actually, I've never felt that the ability to mentor has been constrained or restricted in some way because of that cross-company information flow thing. Because at the end of the day, I think you're talking about people, and you're talking about sort of interactions and relationships that people have. At least that's been my experience. I'm never given a technical problem to solve, and nor would I really expect to be able to solve a technical problem for an organization I have no sort of prior context or knowledge of.
Yeah, well said. Claire, Emma, do you want to add to anything onto that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I don't think it's something that I've encountered either. I think, as Jen says, it's about the situation and the relationships and things like that, rather than anything that might be considered commercial in confidence. And also, when you think about it, how many CEOs, board members out there have mentors and coaching type relationships, and the stuff that they must be privy to and share with their coaches and mentors. I think it's protected. It's kind of protected within the relationship.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Claire, any final thoughts, and then I think we can close the conversation.
No, I think Jen and Emma's answers, totally agree with that. It's not ever been an issue for me. It's often something very sort of, not generic's not the right word, but it would be, if it's to help with strategy, you don't necessarily need to know all about the business or details of the strategy. You can still help it. What might you be looking for? What could people think about?
Yeah. So if mentors out there are getting whole slide decks that say confidential, not for external distribution, then I think there's a question that needs to be raised. But thank you, all of you for your candid and personal reflections. It's great to hear that the mentoring program has been impactful for you as mentors, and that it's very clear that the relationships have impacted your mentees very positively. So once again, a huge thank you for your time and for your continued efforts and support, and a huge thank you to everyone for joining. And lastly, a huge thank you to Lauren, who heads up our mentoring program, and all the great work that you do. I look forward to running another conversation. I think I've committed to it already in running one for mentees now, so rip to my workload. But I look forward to joining some of you, hopefully, for this discussion as it evolves in the coming months and years. And I wish you all great success on the mentoring program as and when you participate in it. And thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the week. Catch you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.